vibe like in court today? How does Sean Combs appear? Who's there? Paint the picture for us, because unfortunately, as we know, there are no cameras. There are no audio recordings allowed in that courtroom. What did you see and what did you hear?
Imagine sliding into the back of a sleek, black SUV on a warm summer night, headlights slicing through the darkness as the engine hums. You settle in, expecting the usual hush of tinted windows and low conversation. Instead, you're confronted by a sight straight out of a crime thriller: 3 handguns, loaded, casually resting in the lap of the music mogul you've admired for years. This isn't a movie set, it's the real world of Sean Diddy Combs, as described by his former assistant, David James. In a Manhattan federal courtroom, under the glare of overhead lights and the unblinking eyes of a jury, James recounted that moment with unnerving clarity. 1 minute, he was just another aide carrying bags. The next, he was face to face with the raw embodiment of power laced with paranoia. That night began with a routine tip: Suge Knight, the rap industry's notorious hard man, might be at Mel's Diner. What followed was a whirlwind of tense introductions, hurried orders, and a sudden decision to return and confront Knight. As they drove back, Combs climbed into the back with 3 handguns in his lap, pointed barrels glinting under the dome light. James says he was shook, and who could blame him? But this bombshell wasn't an isolated incident. It's emblematic of a pattern of secrecy, intimidation, and alleged criminal enterprise that prosecutors say defines Combs' world. That RICO case hinges on moments like these, where the lines between celebrity and crime blur dangerously. This story isn't about gossip magazines. It's a look behind the velvet rope, into a kingdom where loyalty is tested at gunpoint and no expense gets recorded. As we unpack each chapter, remember, the most shocking revelations aren't found on stage or in the studio, but in the hidden corridors of power. But that gun-toting ride was only the opening salvo. When you think of Sean Diddy Combs, you probably picture platinum records, Grammy stages, and luxury fashion lines, an empire built on beats and branding. But prosecutors say there's a far darker ledger beneath the glossy veneer, a racketeering enterprise that spans sex trafficking, forced performances, bribery, and intimidation. Under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, the government must prove that Combs' actions were part of an ongoing criminal organization, not isolated mistakes or celebrity excess. Enter David James, the assistant who spent 2 years living inside that enterprise, from 2007 to 2009. James arrived wide-eyed and eager, ready to learn from a business titan. He left wary and disillusioned, carrying a notebook full of transactions that would make any seasoned investigator pause. In court, he described hotel rooms stocked with 30-bottle medicine cabinets, jets that flew at a moment's notice, and staff instructed to obey without question. Every detail: how much cash Combs kept in his Louis Vuitton bag, which nights the freak-offs occurred, even the code names for his suppliers, painted a picture of meticulous planning. This wasn't a series of glamorous parties. Prosecutors call it a criminal enterprise with a hierarchy, defined roles, and ruthless enforcement of loyalty. At its core, the RICO charges demand proof of an association-in-fact enterprise. Prosecutors argue that Combs didn't just get caught up in wrongdoing, he orchestrated it, leveraging his fame to mask illicit operations. James' testimony ties the threads together: off-the-books purchases, coerced performances, and security tactics that ensured no one spoke out. This enterprise, they say, wasn't accidental, it was engineered. Yet for all the legal jargon, the heart of the matter is simple: power unchecked becomes corruption. And as James took the stand, he didn't just recount events, he built a roadmap of how fame became a tool of control, and how those nearest to Combs found themselves trapped in a gilded cage. And if you think that's intense, wait until you hear about the secret shopping lists. Expenses in the music industry are legendary: lavish wardrobes, 5-star hotels, gourmet catering on private jets. Yet when it came to certain personal items, Combs drew a hard line: no receipts, no paper trail. David James testified that items like condoms, baby oil, and personal lubricant never made it onto Bad Boy Entertainment's expense reports. Instead, he'd approach Combs' security detail and say, "Mike, grab the cash from the bag," with tens of thousands in unaccounted bills stuffed into a Louis Vuitton duffel. James would pay up front and file zero paperwork. Why go to such lengths? Prosecutors contend these weren't mere toiletries but props in what Combs called freak-offs, sex-fueled performances orchestrated under the influence of drugs. Each unrecorded dollar became a piece of evidence. The more money flowed off the books, the deeper the conspiracy. And it wasn't just a convenience. It was a calculated measure to bury the truth. Submit a normal receipt, and auditors would ask questions. skip the trail, and you leave prosecutors scrambling for proof. James described the culture around these purchases as fraught with risk. He recounted nights when he waited outside drugstores until Combs texted a code word, signaling it was safe to retrieve supplies. If there was even a hint of suspicion, if someone joked about missing receipts, James said Combs snapped, "You know what rhymes with tired? Fired." That refrain wasn't a punchline, it was a warning that no employee dared risk questioning the system. In court, each item on James' secret shopping list became a symbol of control. The untraceable cash showed who wielded real power and who obeyed. It wasn't about hygiene, it was about secrecy, coercion, and maintaining the illusion that Combs' world was as carefree as the photos his PR team released. Protection can quickly morph into intimidation. David James testified that whenever Combs traveled, he never rode alone. A second vehicle would flank the SUV, driven by security armed and alert. Their mission: prevent anyone from pulling up on Combs, whether paparazzi or potential assassins. Yet behind the veneer of VIP protection lay tactics that blurred the line between safeguarding and terrorizing. In one incident, Combs' Cartier bracelet vanished. James described being summoned at dawn to the security office, where every staff member, himself included, was ordered to strip their bags and wallets for a search. Privacy evaporated. On other occasions, Combs insisted lie detector tests administered by a man claiming ex-FBI credentials. "It was very intimidating," James said. "I didn't feel I could refuse." The polygraph machine became a tool of fear, a reminder that loyalty was measured not just by performance but by submission. Even casual questions about missing items were met with hostility. James recalled searching for minutes to find an envelope of cash, only to be berated for incompetence. "I thought I'd be fired if I couldn't find it," he testified. These tactics weren't isolated, they formed a consistent pattern of coercion, ensuring staff stayed silent and compliant. When James detailed these protocols, you could sense the courtroom shift. Jurors leaned forward as he described uniforms, tinted windows, and the silent message: step out of line, and you risk more than a job. You risk your dignity, your privacy, your livelihood. Coming up, the pharmaceutical underworld fueling Combs' empire. The pulse of Combs' inner circle was driven by a potent cocktail of Percocet, ecstasy, and cocaine. David James' testimony peeled back the party scene facade to reveal a well-oiled supply chain. He spoke of a supplier dubbed One Stop, who delivered pills to Combs' door, of midnight runs in St. Tropez to secure lines of cocaine for friends, and of ecstasy hidden in unmarked bottles within a sprawling medicine bag. James didn't start out morally conflicted, he saw it as part of the job. But as he described procuring alcohol in one hand and party drugs in the other, the courtroom felt the gravity of each transaction. On tour, Combs would call for Percocet to stay sharp through 12-hour workdays. At night, he'd request Molly to keep energy levels sky high. James said he watched executives and scions of fame party until dawn, propped up by pills and powders that erased fatigue and blurred consequences. Prosecutors argue this seamless flow of drugs wasn't casual. It was orchestrated to coerce and control. Take, for example, a Los Angeles event where James was sent back to Combs' mansion for ecstasy. He found it in a secret compartment in a Louis Vuitton travel bag, counted out the pills, and returned. No questions asked? This show-up-and-comply dynamic built loyalty through dependency. Staff who supplied the goods were indispensable, but also indebted. By the time the courtroom heard these stories, the image of Combs as a benign entertainer had cracked. Behind the scenes, a network of transactions tied drug dependency to performance in freak-offs and private gatherings, parties that prosecutors say were more than hedonistic escapades. They were cogs in a criminal machine. But perhaps the darkest element lies in what happened behind closed doors. Cassie Ventura wasn't just Combs' girlfriend, she was a star in her own right. Yet behind the glossy covers of magazines lay a troubling confession: "I can't get out." That phrase, overheard by James during a private conversation, became a linchpin for prosecutors arguing sex trafficking and coercion. According to James, Ventura confided that the lifestyle was crazy, and when he urged her to leave, she whispered that she had no choice. Prosecutors paint these freak-offs as events where women, under the influence of drugs supplied by Combs, performed sexual acts for money or influence, with implied threats of career sabotage, or worse if they refused. James testified that he saw women arrive at Combs' residences disoriented, unable to drive themselves, their autonomy stripped by a system that traded glamour for submission. Even if physical violence wasn't overt, the leverage of power, fame, and financial dependency created an environment where no wasn't truly an option. James witnessed Ventura's tears after arguments about her contract, her music career, and her image. He never saw Combs strike her. But he heard the slamming doors, felt the tension in the air, and observed how quickly allegations of assault would be buried by force and manipulation. When a blog post accused Combs of violence, he demanded James check browser histories, another reminder that dissent was dangerous. In court, each of these moments coalesced into a portrait of coercion, the unrecorded payments, the drug dependence, the emotional blackmail. Prosecutors argue that this constellation of control tactics meets the legal definition of trafficking, obtaining services through force, fraud, or coercion. But how did the defense respond? We'll explore that in the next section. Cross-examination in high-stakes trials often resembles gladiatorial combat. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilo pounced on David James' recollections, highlighting discrepancies between FBI agent notes, government proffer documents, and James' testimony. Did the tense Mel's Diner incident occur inside or outside? Had James really been shook by the guns in Combs' lap, or was he embellishing for effect? Each challenge aimed to undermine his credibility, yet James stood firm. With a calm voice, he clarified that preliminary notes taken under government direction contained errors and omissions. These are inaccurate, he told the defense, pointing to verbatim passages in his personal notebook. When asked if he felt prepared for danger, he countered, respectfully, "Sir, when someone's got 3 guns inches from your head, it's hard to feel anything but afraid." Even laughter erupted when James admitted the defense had joked about his consistency on the stand, a moment that undercut any notion he was a rehearsed puppet. Perhaps the most dramatic moment came when court transcripts replayed the audio of Combs' voice, demanding James retrieve Ventura's breakfast and then chase down Suge Knight. The jurors leaned forward as the recordings crackled, a real-time snapshot of power dynamics, from whispered orders to loaded silences. In that charged atmosphere, James' recollections gained a gravitas no script could match. By the time Cross wrapped up, it was clear this battle wasn't won on details alone. It was won on conviction, the assistant's unwavering insistence that what he witnessed was real, even if it shattered the myth of Combs the marketer and philanthropist. So where does this leave us? And what comes next? David James' testimony stripped away the gloss to expose a world where fame became a tool of coercion, secrecy reigned supreme, and loyalty was enforced at gunpoint. We've walked through hidden cash bags, armed convoys, party-fueled drug runs, and whispered pleas for help, each serving as a brick in the alleged RICO enterprise. Yet beyond the legal definitions, there's a larger question: what happens when our icons become untouchable? When celebrity status shields purported crimes? As Combs' fate now rests in the hands of jurors, we're left to ponder the implications for accountability in an age of megastars. Will the courts hold him responsible for the cracks in his empire? Or will his legend withstand the weight of these allegations? For viewers, the lesson is clear: celebrity culture can fracture under scrutiny, revealing uncomfortable truths about power, privilege, and responsibility. What would you do if you were David James, unwilling witness to a dynasty built on fear? Drop your thoughts below, share your own take on this blockbuster trial, and subscribe for our next deep dive. Because in a fractured world, even fame isn't flawless, and we'll be here every Tuesday and Friday to expose the cracks behind the spotlight.